the kickoff of the US pivotal study for Topaz, our tricuspid transcatheter replacement system. We are the first company to get their US pivotal up and running with the first enrollment in the United States. And this is a trial that's really gutsy. And it's that way by design from the FDA. We were asked by the FDA to go head to head with the only commercial valve available, the Edwards EVOQUE. So, whereas in other valve therapies, people have waited much longer to go head to head, this is happening right out of the gate. And so, Topaz will be compared head to head against EVOQUE in a randomized trial. And I think the community is eager to see how those results will turn out. And we're pretty confident Topaz is going to perform exceedingly well.
Well, there's not many bigger companies that you could go head to head against. So you're absolutely right. And I can imagine there's some anxious moments, some exciting moments. But yeah, I think we're all very eager to find out how the trial ends up finishing. Talk to me a little bit about the tricuspid space. So it often used to get called the forgotten valve. It was called this for decades. Why was it forgotten? What was it in the anatomy or the patients or the economics of it? What was it that was making it the forgotten valve?
Yeah, it's a great question, Gordon. I mean, when I was launching TAVR 16, 17 years ago, we were just on the uh, verge of making TAVR standard of care. Everyone was focused on the left side of the heart because that's the high pressure circuit in the heart. The right side of the heart is very low pressure, and people thought, look, distension of the right side is probably not as critical. It only goes to the lungs, and so we should really focus on the high pressure side of the heart, and that's how TAVR got built out, and now it's generating $9 billion in revenue worldwide every year, and that number is just growing. So it was forgotten for a very long time, like you said. Surgically, surgeons were going in and treating only a very small number of patients, about 1,000 patients a year, which is less than 1% of the prevalence of tricuspid regurgitation. And the reason for that is, look, the right side of the heart is very frail, it's very delicate. And patients were deemed way too high of a surgical risk at the time. So surgeons weren't treating it. There were no transcatheter options, and patients were just told, look, you stay on your diuretics, stay on your medications, and hopefully things improve, but this is all we can do for you. And I think now it's been proven that treatment with either repair or replacement is an excellent option for patients. Their quality of life is significantly improved, and there's some early data that's come out, 2-year data that suggests there is a mortality benefit as well. So hopefully that data continues to develop, and we can show the world that treating the right side of the heart is critical.
So you spent almost 2 decades really, building out left atrial appendage therapies at AtriCure. You just mentioned a few of the benefits on the right side now. What do you think was the first sign that, ultimately pulled you across to right side therapies?
Yeah, it's very observant of you. I spent my career on the left side of the heart, 27 years or so, whether it's valve replacement, closure of the appendage, treating atrial fibrillation, treating septal defects of all kinds, just really fascinating things that interventional cardiologists and cardiac surgeons can do, and electrophysiologists for that matter. But it was really the physicians who pulled me over. So over this long time period, you get to know key opinion leaders very well. And I had already been in the electrophysiology world for a decade, and cardiac surgeons and interventional cardiologists told me, Ahmed, you really need to take a look at this company, TRiCares. There's something special about this. They really started from a white sheet of paper and decided what to do, what to build for the right side of the heart. And we love this therapy, but we know that not every good therapy gets a chance to go into commercial use. And so we really need you to help this company take this amazing technology and get it into the marketplace because we want it. So when you hear that from physicians you've idolized your whole life, I mean, you take a look at the company. And I took a very close look. I fell in love with the technology. It is so simple and elegant. And that kind of elegance and simplicity only comes after about a decade worth of work. And I think what I counted is 12 iterations of the product to reach something that is stable and repeatable. And fell in love with the team. I think it's a fantastic team. based in Munich, Germany, now out of the US, also in Brazil. I thought the founder was absolutely brilliant, Pascal Lim, an echocardiographer from Paris, France. And the board is extremely supportive and very, very well versed in cardiovascular and in structural heart in particular. So it was just an excellent combination of all these factors that was too hard to turn down. So I came and uh, the physicians weren't wrong. They had told me, listen, this was forgotten. It's forgotten no more. And as a matter of fact, it has a potential to be an even larger therapy area than aortic valve replacement, TAVR.
I love the fact that you've done it the way you did, and I think another person you probably may know him, Wayne Patterson from Anteris. He also mentioned a similar story when they had to pivot out of their tricky spot as a business. The first decision he made was go to market, speak with the key opinion leaders, and find out what's going on. And exactly that, he listened to the market, and that's where they sort of took the business on its next phase of play. And it sounds like you guys also did the same. You listen to where the device is going to be. It's going to be in the hands of those physicians. Ultimately, they know what they need. They know what they're looking for. So I wonder if that's a bit of a recipe for success, a recipe of success. Going and speaking to the market first. You mentioned as well that you took over this role from Pascal Lim. How does it feel to take over from a founder era leader? Because he'd been running their business for what, 8, 9 years before you came into it. What did you decide to change early doors, and what did you decide to keep there as well?
Absolutely. I mean, you're exactly right. In a super high technology field where um, the survival of the field is really dependent on new technology coming to the marketplace, things change very quickly. And so, if you're not constantly listening to the operators who are on the front line, you're going to be behind. And for a startup like ours, we can't afford to do that. So, Wayne is a very, very good friend. And yeah, he's shared with me his story as well, just like you described. And um, it, I couldn't agree more. I think if you stop listening to them on the front line, you're going to fall behind, and pretty soon you'll be obsolete. So it is critical, like you mentioned. And two, uh, I had a buffer between myself and Pascal. Pascal continues to be involved in the company to this day. He actually attended all of the first 70 procedures that were performed by the company, and he was absolutely essential to figuring out how to do this in an easy, straightforward, reproducible manner. He's a professor of echocardiography. He was practicing and continues to practice in a hospital in northern Paris, and he's just a huge asset to the company. So it's been very smooth transition. He had brought on board Helmut Straubinger, who was the former CEO of Jena Valve. So you can see a lot of valve pedigree in the company. And Helmut did a great job expanding the size of the company, using everything he knew. Give you an example. Um, Most startups in our space use a transjugular access. So they go through the neck and they implant the valve. Why do they do this? Because it's a very straight shot. It's very simple to design a delivery catheter. But we know for a fact that physicians do not want transjugular access. They want a femoral access, very much like every therapy that they do besides tricuspid. So while it's easier for a company to start with intrajugular or transjugular access, our company started with transfemoral from day one. We figured out how to make these tight curves and deliver the device in under 20 minutes total of procedure time. So we took the hard road, and were able to succeed in that. While others now, going into their US pivotal, are just trying to figure out how to use their delivery system transfemoral, and it's challenging. They're seeing that for themselves firsthand. So we're very fortunate to have had the experience of Pascal leading us to a better procedure, and then Helmut really guiding the company based on all the learnings from TAVR, so that this tricuspid field can get a head start and be really successful.
It's a question I wanted to go across, really. So, you've done tons of work in the TAVR space. How much of that is transferable to tricuspid? And was there certain elements of it that you had to unlearn so that you could learn the future?
Really excellent question, because yes, there was a lot to unlearn. And we run across that every time we bring new team members to the company, even within tricuspid. And I'll explain why. Uh, when you're in the right side of the heart, because of the harsh environment you're in, because of the fact that the leaflets are calcified with nodules on top of them, they're rigid, they don't flex out of the way, and you're in a high pressure environment, you need a very stiff and rigid valve. That's the only thing that can work in aortic or mitral. You go to the right side of the heart, where it's a very low pressure system. There is no calcification. The leaflets are paper thin, and you need something that's very soft and flexible. So that seems like a simple transition, but it's a complete change in mindset in how you deliver the valve. What are you trying to do? You're basically putting it in three-dimensional space in its forever location because it will not dislodge any of the neighboring structures. And this is a huge plus because the conduction system sits proud into the tricuspid annulus. And so the current commercial valve, the EVOQUE from Edwards, puts pressure. It is a rigid valve. It reshapes the annulus to a perfect circle like the valve is. And as a result, it puts pressure on the conduction mechanism, and more than 25% of the patients require a new pacemaker to be placed. So this is really, really problematic for patients to be pacemaker dependent after a procedure. And what's even scarier is a lot of times it doesn't show up till they leave the hospital. So they leave the hospital and then they go into heart block at some period after that, and get picked up by an ambulance, go to a different hospital, have to have a pacemaker put in past their tricuspid evoke device. It's very scary for physicians, and this is the number one reason they're looking for a better technology that reduces the pacemaker rate. And we've reported 0% pacemakers because we have a very soft valve. So it requires a lot of unlearning, like you said, a lot of figuring out how to deliver a valve three-dimensionally in the exact spot you want to without deforming the anatomy. But it's worth it in the end because you end up with a very low pacemaker rate.
Interesting. So let's lean into what you're building for then. So you're building for the future. The current standard of care, you've just mentioned it, that is, the Edwards EVOQUE. What does this next generation actually need to deliver? So both for patients and the physicians.
Yeah, it's coming up very soon here. And at every conference, this is the number one topic of discussion amongst the key opinion leaders. They have many panels where they have very enlightening conversation on the topic. There are a few things that are really important. One, the pacemaker rate needs to come down. Two, the number of patients that can be treated by the therapy has to be large enough. What do I mean by that? The current delivery systems sometimes require a very deep ventricle to be able to deliver the payload. And that can be restrictive for a lot of therapies. We don't require, our delivery system doesn't protrude deeply into the ventricle. And so we can treat a much larger percent of patients. Another constraint, let's say, with the current systems is that uh, they require fixation to the underside of the leaflet. So you have to image for about an hour. And that is a huge burden for the echocardiographers. They have to find the leaflet in 9 locations. They have to place the anchor of the EVOQUE underneath the tricuspid leaflet in all 9 of those locations. And they have to check it 4 or 5 times each of those 9 locations throughout the deployment to make sure that they have anchored to the bottom of the leaflet successfully throughout the procedure. As you can imagine, this is a lot of echo probe going back and forth, a lot of imaging, I can't really see where the leaflet is. I assume it's in the right place. Maybe we can use a different type of catheter. And it's a heavy burden on the system, and it makes the procedure time very long, often an hour and a half to 2 hours, if not more. That's hard to build the standard of care therapy around. And so our therapy is delivered in 20 minutes. We actually just push the leaflets aside and affix to the open face of them, so we don't have to do intensive imaging on echo. And as a result, some procedures are as fast as 10 minutes and some as long as 30 minutes, but we don't see the 2 hour, 2.5 hour procedure that is common today. So those are maybe the top 3 things that have to be addressed with a next generation delivery system and valve.
And let's talk about the sort of principles of it then. So soft on the outside, stiff on the inside. Why does a soft outer housing change what happens to the heart's conduction system?
Yeah. When the valve is implanted at the end of the day, it has to be in contact, or it has to be at least opposed to the wall of the ventricle. And if you are opposed to the wall of the ventricle, but the mechanism of action, the way that you fixate to the native anatomy is by radial force, then you have to, in essence, push up against the walls. And if you're pushing against the walls, you're pushing against the conduction system, and it's a delicate conduction system. So you can block the only pathway for the signal of the heart to get from the atrium to the ventricle. The AV node is what it's called. You block the AV node and you're going to end up with heart block where the ventricle no longer beats. And now you have to put a pacemaker lead through and deliver a signal directly into the ventricle. So if you are soft and you do not rely on radial force like Topaz is, and you rely instead on these small atraumatic anchors all the way around the outside of the valve that just entangle with the native leaflets, you are no longer putting pressure on the AV node. You are allowing the signal to flow uninhibited from the atrium to the ventricle, and the ventricle can beat freely. And so, for that reason, it's really important to have a soft outer stent. And we have gone through so many iterations, Jordan. I mean, the valve started off as a woven nitinol valve. Okay, so think of a septal defect closure device. You basically take nitinol wire and you weave it into a shape. That was not going to be a successful device. And we found that out in the first 3 years. The team added anchors to that woven nitinol, and they found that still there's not enough fixation in that configuration. And then they also discovered that woven nitinol rubs against each other. And as it rubs, it starts to fracture the different wires. And as a result, your device ends up with fractures. And so this was not going to be a successful device. And the team did a great job pivoting in 2016 to a device that was an inner stent and an outer stent. And then it went to a laser cut outer stent. And throughout this whole process, all of these iterations, the point I'm trying to make is um, the principle did not change. The principle was the outside needs to be soft. And so from day one, Pascal's vision was we need a valve where the outside is soft. And he tried to do it initially with woven nitinol, and then it migrated to 2 stents, and then it migrated to a laser cut stent. And after several iterations, we have now what seems very intuitive, very elegant, almost, commonsensical. Why? Obviously, this is how you would design a valve, but you would never arrive here if you didn't go through all the iterations to end up with something that's simple that you have super high confidence in. So um, uh, it's very important to be soft, and that was the idea from the very, very beginning, regardless of the design.
Okay, I like that. So there was a general principle that was always followed. There's lots of different changes, but the end goal was always in mind. So that does make a lot of sense. So something that sort of stuck with me from when we had our pre-discussion, you mentioned that the right side of the heart, every anatomy looks different. So why does conformability beat trying to design the perfectly shaped rigid valve?
That's that's exactly the point of Topaz. So you have two options. You can either respect the anatomy or you can change the anatomy. Those are the two options for every valve company that they have to make. And any device that is rigid, the concept is that you oversize to the anatomy and you change the anatomy. We already explained for a couple of reasons why changing the anatomy in the tricuspid space is not a good idea. Um, in our case, we decided to respect the anatomy. And when you respect the anatomy, you have to respect it with all of the different configurations that it comes in. So the tricuspid leaflet configuration is so different. You can have 3 leaflets that look like a Mercedes-Benz sign, which is your typical configuration, but that's very uncommon as a matter of fact. Sometimes there are 7 leaflets in the tricuspid annulus. Sometimes there's 9. Sometimes some are larger, some are smaller. The annulus itself is D-shaped. It can be avocado-shaped. It can be elliptical. It can be figure-of-8 shaped. There are all sorts of configurations because remember, this is the side of the heart that is soft, flaccid, and flexible. So if you're going to respect that anatomy and it's soft and variable, you can't come to the market with a design that has a single shape. And that's really important because there are attempts out there to place a valve that is round, oversize, and make the annulus look round. Well, you're going to inhibit part of its function by doing that. There are devices that are elliptical in shape. There's actually one device that is advertising itself as being D-shaped. Okay, so these are predetermined shapes, and the anatomy is not one shape or the other. So having this soft outer stent that conforms, and we have in the office a mural of 8 different valve configurations that we've treated that show you just the extensive range of the shape and how this conformability allows us to look teardrop shaped in some annuluses, a figure of 8, a bean shaped in different annuluses. You can't design a valve that is bean shaped, but you can design a valve that has a soft outer member and can conform to any of those shapes. So very important not to have a singular shape, or else you run into problems like having to create an infinite number of size configurations. Okay, we're an elliptical valve, we're a D-shaped valve. Now I have to uh, provide 2 dimensions or size to 2 dimensions, the long axis and the short axis of the valve. I have to figure out where the D is going to be located, the flat side of the D. And if the annulus doesn't look like that, okay, well, I'm going to change the shape of the annulus to make it conform. And once you change, you're incurring pacemaker rates along with that. So super important to us to be conformable, as you mentioned, and the performance now in 140 patients treated to date has validated that concept. It was a theory. It was a working hypothesis that we had, and the company stuck to it for 13 years before we even did the first case in human. And we're very happy to see that it's proving to be a validated concept now.
Well, you couldn't have unpacked that any better. That was super. That was very well answered. One thing I want to ask you, I often see Topaz get called the 90% valve. What does that mean?
That's a great question. So we always say within the company that we are trying to create the valve of choice. And we mean by that is we are not intending to go into the marketplace in the US and Europe and beyond with a valve that is great for 10% of cases or 15% of cases that cannot be treated by the current commercial valve. That's not our goal. Our goal is to create a brand new standard of care that can treat the 90% of patients successfully and be the valve of choice for each of the physicians. And so when you want to be the valve of choice, you have to make some very, very thoughtful decisions all along the way. You have to protect your procedure time. You cannot do all sorts of fancy things that add time to your procedure and make it a valve that is not a valve of choice. It is only a side valve because it takes too long to do, it's too complicated. So we have to continue to solve the hard problems, but we have to do it in a way that is simple, easily reproducible, and continues to be a quick procedure. Other things we have to do, Jordan, is have a big enough size offering to cover 90% of the patients. So we have that currently. It's why we introduced a large size valve, and we continue to make sure and refine. And keep in mind that this is a growing field. So people don't know yet. People don't know what size of patients they're going to be able to treat successfully. When we were in TAVR, we always talked about this quote unquote cohort C. And cohort C was a cohort that was too sick to treat with TAVR. And the question was, is there a cohort C? Could you treat every patient? Is it worth providing the therapy to a patient when perhaps they have other disease states that are going to be far more restraining for them? And so cohort C was a big question, and the same conversation has emerged in tricuspid. If you have an annulus that is 75 millimeters, 75 millimeters is basically putting something that's like a 2-liter bottle of Coke into the annulus. That's a huge amount of hardware. Is that really the right thing to do? Should you implant a valve in that patient? Should you consider a different therapy? So we're wrestling with the same questions that were wrestled with in other therapies, aortic and mitral particularly. And the community will come up with an answer, but they don't have it yet. So we're being very vigilant to watch for this and make sure that we can continue to treat the 90% of patients, not be a niche valve that can treat 10 or 15%.
I want to take a minute to say thank you to our sponsors, TTP. TTP is a leader in complex medical device development. With deep scientific and engineering expertise, they help medtech teams crack tough development challenges and make the right calls early, reducing rework, delays, and uncertainty later on. Whether you're navigating uncharted technical territory or racing towards market, TTP brings clarity and real-world judgment to the decisions that shape performance, usability, and manufacturability. By retiring risk early and grounding innovation in real-world constraints, they help you move forward with speed and confidence. To find out more, check out the show notes.
So let's talk about that. So you've gone through 11 iterations now. The device is getting to where you want it to be. It's already proven itself in results. Um, part and parcel now, I've proven it in the clinic. You've gone for a dual path of CE pivotal and US pivotal running in parallel. Not every company wants to go that route. It's a lot to stomach. It normally means someone's very bullish about what they're bringing to market, which is a good thing. Talk to me about first results. Then you published them at Euro Intervention. I want to know the sort of the good, the bad, the ugly. What did those first 20 patients tell you?
Yeah, we're very fortunate to be able to pursue both paths. Like I said, we have a very supportive board. They have been very bullish on the technology. They've seen what it can do. They hear directly from physicians, and so we are pursuing this dual path, both in the U.S. and Europe, just like you described. In the U.S., we have kicked off our U.S. pivotal. We were the first company to do so in almost record time, I'd say, Jordan. We got approval end of March, beginning of April, and we implanted our first patient end of June. So it's a very, very fast turnaround time. And that was only possible because our principal investigators, Pradeep Yadav and Neil Pham, are two of the best in this space. They are very, very productive and thoughtful and insightful investigators, and they were determined to move forward. So we matched their pace and we were able to get this off the ground so quickly. In Europe, we're about to finish our EU pivotal study, and we'll be pursuing CE mark immediately after that. So in 2027, we expect to have the valve commercially available in Europe. We did first in human and early feasibility studies. The early feasibility study was in the US and will be published at TCT in October. So people can look forward to getting another readout on the therapy at that point. And we published already our first in human data. This first in human data was really exciting because it confirmed a lot of what we thought the valve would do. So we had complete elimination of TR to grade 0 or 1, which is none to mild or trace. And that is well below the standards of having to achieve TR2 or less in patients. So we were always 0 or 1, and we see that continuing to bear out in our 140 patient clinical experience. On top of that, the procedure time was 30 minutes or so. So it really confirmed that from the time you put the sheath in to the time you put the sheath out, you're going to have a very short procedure. And then finally, we had a pacemaker rate of 0. We don't expect this number to be 0 forever. There will be some pacemakers, but it really confirmed that this soft outer shell does exactly what we think it does. So the results were great. The study was conducted in France, Belgium, and Switzerland, and this was the early experience. So that was the positive. The negative was that we decided to re-intervene because brand new way of putting the device in. So anytime we didn't see a perfect deployment that was exactly perpendicular, or anytime a physician was concerned that maybe the struts would be too close to the wall of the ventricle, there was always a suggestion that maybe we go in and put a couple stitches and hold the valve in place because it's never been implanted before. We worked with the physicians and we allowed that to happen. So it counts as a re-intervention. But in reality, our physicians gained a lot of confidence through that early experience, and we no longer do that. We know that the valve has a lot of forgiveness in it, and so you can implant it perfectly. You have a range of an imperfect implant that continues to be very, very stable throughout, and the patient does very well, and we no longer have that concern. So we had some re-interventions. And then the ugly is that we had to learn. I mean, this was the first 20 patients. No one had implanted a soft valve before, and we had to learn. And there were some things that happened. I'll give you an example. In one case, we had a really beautiful deployment, really great outcome for the patient. And then in retracting the system out of the body, we did not give instructions to the physicians how to manage the nose cone, which protrudes into the ventricle, and you have to pull it out through the valve to take the delivery system out. And the nose cone got caught on the valve, and during the process of removing the valve, it dislodged the valve. So this is something we unfortunately had to learn the hard way. This was the ugly, that you have to also be careful how you remove the delivery system out of the body. Now today, everybody knows that that's the case, and every system shows you that the nose cone has to be taken out thoughtfully. You have to image it in a certain way to make sure it's in the middle of the valve and not hanging up on one of the sides. And we had to learn it just like everyone else. So that was unfortunate that in that case, the nose cone ended up changing the position of the valve. But early learnings, and we're better off for it now, and we don't see that happening anymore.
Something that you mentioned on that, and I just want to go over it because I think we get a lot of listeners from different areas of cardiovascular, and this space is, very different. So a lot of them, can you explain to people why the pacemaker part is so important? It ultimately haunts people in tricuspid replacement, right?
It really does. I mean, the pacemaker, if this was something that emerged during the time of the procedure, you could take action and address it. The problem with this pacemaker implant, even in the TRISCEND 2 data that was published by EVOQUE, a lot of it happens later. It can happen while the patient is recovering in the ward of the hospital, but also happens after they leave the hospital. And that's what haunts the physician. I mean, they don't want to send the patient home, have them have an event, heart block, where there's no blood going to the rest of the body. The ventricle is not pumping anymore, and they have to be rushed to the hospital. It is a life and death situation, and then they get a pacemaker implanted, and hopefully they are able to recover at that point. So it's a complication that is really, really problematic for physicians. And even if the incidence is not 100%, it's still high. I mean, 25% is not a small number, and that's a lot of worry. That's a lot of follow-up for the physicians. If they don't have that, it becomes a system that you can do 5 or 6 a day. You can follow the patients. You can send them home with confidence. And the other part is the burden on the system. So today, the procedure is fully reimbursed in the United States, but when a pacemaker is placed, that ends up costing the system extra that was unanticipated, and the hospitals have to bear the burden. And it makes it an economically unviable procedure for the hospital. So there's a lot of reasons why this pacemaker is problematic, but most important is the patient doesn't want to go home, feel much better, and then end up back in the hospital for something completely different.
Well, the closer we can keep that to zero, the better. Then it sounds like you guys are working towards that. It's nice that you've got a North Star metric there. It'd be hard to maintain, but I think the closer you can get to that, that'll be absolutely fascinating. Something I want to discuss with you, and it's because every company finds this different. You've mentioned that you're lucky to have a great board and backing behind you. Just how much demand does going dual path really have on a company of your size? For instance, if it was a board that wasn't as forgiving as yours guys, maybe more demanding and harder to work with, can it break down a company?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I am fortunate enough not to have been in that situation. But I think the board composition is essential to the company. I mean, the CEO is responsible for making a lot of the calls, but really the team is the one that executes on the ground. So getting the right people with as much experience and expertise as you can possibly find out there is essential. But then the second part is the board. And the board is going to make decisions about, are we on the right path? How much of our time needs to go into exploring alternatives? And you might think, well, that's a good thing to do all the time. And absolutely it is. But really, the experience level of the board determines how much of your time is spent reaching a decision and how much of your time is spent executing. So because we have such an experienced board that has been in this space, a board that has investments in aortic valves, mitral valves, so they know this landscape, they know our physicians. As a matter of fact, our board is intimately in touch with many of our key opinion leaders, just like I am, and they have the same depth of relationships that I do. That makes a big difference because it gives us time and freedom to execute. And I can't emphasize that enough. If you're spending all of your time raising funds, or if you're spending all of your time evaluating multiple options, you can short circuit a lot of that by a very, very experienced board. And the beauty of our board is we all sit on the same side of the table. So it's not a questioning of the team. We're all on the same side of the table. We start with the problems that we're facing. And mind you, we face many, many problems, but we just refuse to let them bog us down. So we address those together. We take action, but because of the level of experience of the board and the trust they've put in us, we don't have to spend so much time evaluating an infinite number of options or bringing more and more evidence to convince the board. They know what works in this space just like I do.
Try to bring simplicity to the company and to the procedure itself. I love the fact that you mentioned to me that eventually you want it to be trickier to get to the hospital than it is to actually have the procedure itself. I think to have that as the standard of care would be the ultimate goal, right, for the physicians.
That's exactly right. We tell parties that like to come and observe the cases, just know that this is going to be anticlimactic. You're going to spend so much time getting to our facility, wherever we're doing the case. And when you're there, I mean, if it's an 8 o'clock case, you can take a 9:30 flight home. So just be prepared that it's going to be really short and uninteresting. And that's good. That's what you want in a therapy. You don't want an exciting therapy that does a lot of things. You want it to be very straightforward, reproducible, reliable, and then you can stack cases one after the other after the other. And Jordan, I'll give you an example. In Toronto, we work very closely with our PI, Dr. Neil Pham, wonderful, wonderful gentleman. He was pushing us to do 5 cases in a single day. And we said, look, let's save that for when we're commercial. Let's take it easy because these are clinical patients as well. Maybe we want to double check things, triple check things. And we did 3 cases with Dr. Pham, and the team was at Starbucks downstairs having a coffee by 1:32 p.m. And so, it's proving to be something that we want, which is the valve of choice, the standard of care that you can really build your whole practice around.
So we know what you want now. We know what you want to achieve. Let's talk about that then. So all going well and true, what does the execution look like over the next 12 months? What are the milestones that you're working towards?
Yeah, the biggest milestone is just the kickoff. We've earned ourselves the right to work a lot harder at enrolling this US study. We're going to be building up the team in the United States pretty significantly. We're going to be taking on a new space where we can grow and continue to thrive and build up the team and build up different capabilities as far as training goes, as far as meetings with physicians here in Minneapolis. And the milestones for us are really going to be getting to enrollment quickly. Again, there are going to be something like 5 companies that are running a pivotal study, and the FDA has asked all 5 companies to run the same exact study. So each company is going to be enrolling about 500 patients. That's 2,500 patients that will be studied in the next 2.5 to 3 years for tricuspid regurgitation therapies. That is a lot of patients. And the only way that centers can handle this is by picking and choosing which study they want to be involved with. And we insist on being the number one choice for physicians to be involved with. So we've selected 40 sites that we think are absolutely outstanding. These are the ones who are top enrollers in every structural heart study to date. We've picked the 2 top investigators that the best ones that are available out there. And we continue to work with every hospital given all of the expertise that's available. But it's very important to be quick and also to be very thorough. And we can do that because the procedure does not require, like I said, excessive imaging burden. It is not a long procedure. It's very simple and straightforward. And that didn't come overnight, but now it's an advantage for us. Another big goal for us, Jordan, is the finish of the enrollment of the EU pivotal. We're going to be taking a look at the data. We're going to be submitting it to the authorities for CE mark, and we expect to have a commercial launch in 2027, which is right around the corner. So those are the 2 big clinical goals for the company. We have several small iterations and tweaks of the device that will be coming as well as the delivery system. And then finally, we really want to establish a cadence. So when I talk to the company, success for us looks like we have a process to handle 10 plus cases a week, not a month, per week. We can handle 10 cases across the globe, mostly in the US and Europe. And we can do that successfully. And that means we can screen patients quickly. It means that we can get product all across the world on the drop of a dime. And it means that we can support cases successfully, simply, and have great follow-up on those procedures. So we need to operate very fluidly. And we have a saying in the company that I borrowed from Formula One, that smooth is fast and slow is smooth. So really, slow is fast. And that's how we're going to get to this stage where we can do 10 cases a day. We take it slow, we sweat the small things, we make sure that everything is in the right place. And as you keep doing that time after time, you start to become smooth. You start to become very routine for you. And when it becomes routine, it speeds up and speeds up and speeds up. And before you know it, you can handle 10 cases a week, no problem. Today, Jordan, for comparison's sake, we're doing between 4 and 6 cases every week. And that can be in Spain, that can be in France, Germany, here in the United States, Canada. We're very prolific, and we're doing a lot with a very small team. And, like we said, if you want to be fast, smooth is fast and slow is smooth. So slow is fast.
Sounds to me like you're going to rely on the physician champions. I know this is something that you talk very prominently about and you really like to talk about, just how important is it to have those physicians on board, especially in the sort of trials that you're involved in?
Oh, they're everything. I mean, we're a manufacturer of a device. They're the ones who see the patients. They're the ones who treat the patients. They're the ones who follow the patients. And so none of us has ever implanted a device ourselves. None of us have been in the room talking to the patients and the families, helping them decide, consenting them for a study, or in the future, consenting them to a therapy, commercial therapy. That's all the physicians. And so, like you said from the very beginning, you have to listen to them. You have to rely on them, and they're the ones who are going to drive the therapy. And I always look for partners who uh, have two things. One, they're there for you in thick and thin. So they're not people who tell you, I just want to be a part of the winning team. Well, you don't become part of the winning team, you create the winning team. And so, really, physicians who we end up partnering with are the ones who will be with you through thick and thin. And they've seen difficult cases, they've seen simple cases, and now we've come out the other side with huge, huge learnings that make things straightforward. And the second thing, people who are always innovative, creative, trying to push the envelope. So I'll give you an example. Dr. Pradeep Yadav is well known in the community of tricuspid interventions for changing the imaging. So he started with imaging that goes down your throat, which means the patient has to be put under, completely put out, and that carries a lot of risks to image and see the procedure. Well, he's moving away from that to now a probe that can go through your leg and can sit inside of the heart and take a look at the tricuspid valve location. And that means patients do not have to be put under anymore, maybe just a little bit of conscious sedation. And that reduces the risks. It improves their recovery. It makes the experience way more repeatable and way more patient friendly. And he's really pioneering that space. And we've already started doing these procedures. They're called ICE-based procedures, intracardiac echo, ICE. And he's done a great job with this with other devices. And now we're making sure that our therapy will benefit from the same. So you need investigators that are going to be with you through thick and thin. And you need investigators who are innovative and are going to be thinking of the next step. And that's just one example. We have so many of them.
When you talk about that methodology, then was that something that you knew he had in mind, or is this something that he brought to the table?
He had been developing that as we were already working together. So we know the kind of person this investigator is, and we know the kind of people our other investigators are. And we know that if there is an opportunity, they will go down that path and explore it fully and help us decide if this is something we do or something that is not quite ready for use in a therapy. There's so many developments. Like I said, this is a high technology field. And so as a result, people are constantly bringing in new technologies. I mean, people are doing microsurgery now through catheters. They're cutting leaflets. They're opening the annulus. They're orienting things to allow for a second intervention through the coronaries after your procedure. It's a high innovation field. And you have to have people who are connected to all of that innovation so that you are part of the ecosystem and you don't become a niche valve that can only do certain cases. And by the way, it doesn't work with all of the new things that we're introducing today.
one of the things that you spoke about on our pre-briefing call was people. You're a big advocate of people. You ultimately mentioned that you can have the greatest technology in the world, and it won't matter if you don't have the right team behind you. What are you looking for when you attract people? What is it that's going to make TRiCares stand out as well?
Yeah, when we look for people on the team, we hire for three things, and this is a formula that is not mine. It's very well known in team type cultures. We look for folks who are hungry, humble, and smart. That's the formula. Smart comes in many forms. Some of it is IQ, some of it is EQ, some of it is wisdom. Having tried things and knowing this is ready, this is not ready, this is too early, this is falling behind, we need to get going. So that's smart. Humble, super important. Having the humility to know that the more you know, the more you realize how little you know. And that's what keeps you curious. Just like I said with our investigators, we have to be just as curious as them. And then hungry. So there can be people who are brilliant, but if they're not hungry, if they're not looking to change the standard of care, if they don't have that internal drive, it's a very, very difficult existence and team. So we look for those three things. And once you have people who embody those three characteristics, uh, I don't have to do a lot of day-to-day management of the company. We just simply surface where we're succeeding, where we're having challenges, and people on their own initiative will go and investigate and do it quickly. What are the possibilities? How can we address this? Is there an improvement to be made? Is there something procedural we should be watching out for more carefully? Is there anything in screening we should be adjusting? And it's a beautiful place to work. It's an ideal environment, but it's one you have to guard extremely carefully. You have to keep that kind of a culture from dissipating or becoming secondary or falling hostage to other things. And so the people are super important, like you said. And that's why they stuck to their guns and we ended up where we are with a soft outer shell, which was the idea from day one. And we continue to hire that way. So, Jordan, it can take us anywhere between 3 to 6 months to bring on someone in an important role in the company because we'll interview maybe 15, 20 people and they'll all be great candidates who are doing great things in this space, but they just don't fit with the culture that we have, or they are so advanced in their career and they have so many accomplishments, they're just not quite as hungry anymore. And they have a great role to play in this ecosystem, but in a young company like ours, it has to be those three things and they have to be high. So it takes us a while, but we're always happy with the outcome. When we do it, we never bat 100%. So we're not geniuses at this, but we know what we're looking for, and that helps.
Very, very well answered. The last two questions that I have that I want to leave to for the listeners. The first one is something I ask everyone that comes on here. What's the biggest leadership lesson that you've learned, whether it's good, bad, that you would want to pass on to someone else's wisdom?
Oh, geez. So many lessons I'm learning. I mean, we're all evolving and growing. How to do a good podcast. You've been helpful there, Jordan. Thank you very much. But in all honesty, I think one of the most recent lessons I've learned is uh, good things take time. And what I mean by that is good people take time to settle into their roles, to build their confidence, to feel fully empowered, and to perform on all six cylinders, to really be firing on all cylinders. So we have brought in some super capable folks. And from day one, we feel like, okay, we're going to let them know that they're empowered. We're going to give them the keys to the car, get going. Let us know how we can help. We'll keep onboarding you and involving you in things, and you'll find where to go. And it takes time. So we'll see great performance out of our team members, but you really have to give people some space and some time to grow into a role and just be patient and have faith. So when we hire folks now, this was a very recent lesson for us, and we decided uh, uh, the first 6 months plus, it's like a free ride period. Okay, we're asking things of you. You're going to be producing results for the company, but we know that this isn't your final level of performance. And every time we have been impressed with just how much people step up. So It's almost like a good wine. You got to give people some time to simmer, to come to their full potential. And I think that was a huge uh, leadership lesson that we learned in the company, all of us together.
Thank you very much for sharing that. And then the last one is I want to give you a chance to speak to interventional cardiologists that may be watching this. They're probably interested. People are going to be watching this for Topaz, right? What's the final takeaway? What's the final thing you want to tell people about Topaz and where this is going?
Thank you for giving me that opportunity, Jordan. We have an intensive roster of really top leaders in the interventional cardiology world, but we're not done. And there are others out there that we really want to work with. And we have to make contact. And this is a great way for them to find out about the study and either reach out to us or we'll reach out to them. What I would like to tell them is interventional cardiologists have choices. There will be 5 studies enrolling at the same time. It's a very exciting time for interventional cardiology. In TAVR, when we started that therapy, it was very exciting, but also nerve-wracking because it wasn't clear, will surgeons continue to treat aortic stenosis or can we do something less invasive for patients? And it was back and forth and back and forth. With mitral solutions, those solutions didn't come to bear in the time period. Now they're finally coming to the forefront, but that was also a difficult time. Tricuspid seems to be the opposite. Surgeons have a tough time dealing with these patients and they need an option. There's nothing else out there. And so the pickup has been very fast. And as a result, that's why we have 5 technologies going through a pivotal trial. So physicians have choice and they should really be looking at what technology do they believe in? What do they want to see be the standard of care? Not simply what study do I want to be involved in? So take a look at the technologies closely. They are not the same. There is a very clear differentiation that's happening, almost a 2-tier differentiation. There's 2 therapies potentially that will make it to market and will have a big impact. And there are others that are interesting, but they're really exploratory and too early, or they're designs that came from the mitral world. And we know that's not going to work on the right side of the heart. So physicians have choice. Pick a therapy you really believe in, that you think is the future, that you want to be doing when it's commercial. Don't say I'm going to pick a therapy and help them with their clinical trial, but I would never use this in my practice if it wasn't a study. That's not helpful to the community. And 2, think of the experience that you're going to have throughout the study. Our team is committed to getting answers to physicians within 24 hours and final answers within 3 days, so they can be very timely with their patients. We have a group of physicians that's really dedicated and very forward-looking. So this is a peer group that they will want to be working with. And then finally, this is a study that's going to enroll quickly. So we will have results. We will be able to demonstrate to the field how important TR therapy is. And we might be able to show some new things that haven't been shown before in clinical studies. So really, they have choices. They can make these choices. It's not simply a matter of, where's the path of least resistance. Pick the thing that you really want to see for the success of your therapy, your field, interventional cardiology, and your patients. So thanks for giving me an opportunity to explain that to the physicians out there. And we hope that many of them will come and join our study.
Well, I hope they do, Ahmed. And look, I want to thank you for your time today, everyone. CEO Ahmed, you've been absolutely brilliant. And if anyone wants to reach out to him and doesn't have his contact details, feel free to message me on LinkedIn and I'll sell you it for a cheap price. Ahmed, it was great having you on today, and thank you for sharing some wisdom.
Super pleasure to be with you, Jordan, and congratulations on an incredible podcast.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jordan.
Thanks for listening to The Crux of Cardio. If there's one thing this space has taught me, both personally and professionally, it's that progress in cardiovascular care is never the result of one individual. It's built by ecosystems, by teams, by people willing to take the long bets on hard problems. At Crux, our mission is to support that ecosystem through talent, capital, and community. The podcast is one small part of that effort, a place to share the real stories from people shaping the future of cardiovascular care. If you found value in today's conversation, I would love for you to follow the show and share it with someone building in this space. And if you're a founder, operator, or investor working on something meaningful in the cardiovascular care space, we'd love to hear from you.